So we're picking up in terms of part two, in terms of who's Ryan, and more specifically, what's the mind map, and now probably a bit more on perspective for life.
Yeah, let's hope the part one was interesting enough for people to jump into part two.
So let's see.
Okay, so we covered mind map. Mind map is the foundation of
It's the
perspective.
hub. It's the core.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then perspective for life is something else. And it was a recent, I mean, for me, definitely I was introduced 2 years ago. It was almost like it was ready. It was already formed in your head.
Mm.
It was happening very, very fast. But tell us a little bit about perspective for life.
I think conceptually, I had perspective for life, for probably a couple of years. But then I realized I need to start structuring it in a way where the mind map is one thing, but I needed to be able to take that to a place where, okay, what is its use beyond necessarily only a one-to-one consultation or a couple of group things? And the idea was, I'm having such wonderful response to it. I'm having such great results with it, not only in the people that I'm working with, but
Plus
around
those comments that you mentioned.
all of
I
those
wish
kinds of things.
people would know this. I wish my husband, I wish
Yeah.
they thought this in school and all this. Where is it available? And so,
Yes, it was a common question. What do I tell people you do?
okay. So then was like, how would I translate this to
Yes. So that was
beyond the
when I
walls of the
started thinking
translation?
about
Yeah.
that. And I started thinking, I had a number of, way ahead was something that I had played with as a concept, the way ahead. And I think we're ahead of the game,
Yes.
those kinds of
Okay, yeah.
things. And eventually what I was realizing as I was working through the mind map, and that it was initially, it was really the motivational drive. So at the core of perspective for life are these concept of what fundamentally drives us, that pursuit and preservation of maximal satisfaction. How do we navigate life? Well, that's typically through perspective. Well, what is perspective? Well, it's a construct of mind and brain about what reality is. Okay, so the perspective is not the same as reality. Correct. Reality is the existence of what is, seen or unseen. So we've got a perspective, which is the person's picture or model of reality that they are continually constructing on the basis of what they're hearing, learning, and experiencing. Oh, okay. There is that learning element, there is that growth element, and we've got these emotions thrown in, and we've got these limited resources thrown in. So all of this started expanding to try and say, okay, well, how is it that we actually process life? And in many respects, it was a matter of we need something for life, not only for the experience of life itself, but for a lifetime. So I thought perspective is key. Perspective, I would say, is almost everything. And well, there's benefit there, it's for purpose, but there were those four core elements: the motivation, the perspective, the reality, and the learning
So that's when
elements.
you're coming in.
That's
The name.
that's when
Because
the
I want,
name came, right? So it
yes.
was like,
What does it
perspective
stand
for
for?
life. I liked that. I really liked it. And then it had a tagline that was, we live it how we see it. And the idea there
See
was,
it better to live it better.
that was it. Exactly. So all of those things were coming together to say that if perspective is the basis of how we navigate life, we live it how we see it. And we're looking to improve things. We're looking to improve things in ourselves. We're looking to become better versions of ourselves, whether that's through, growth or maturity or performance, whatever it might be. So then it was a matter of, okay, this concept of understanding has always been at the heart of everything that I've tried to do in practice. And it was a matter of, okay, well, if we understand it better, if our perspective is better, then we can live it better. So, see it better to live it better. And those were all the kinds of things that I was structuring in and around the time of, constructing an umbrella concept that would be helpful to people beyond those who I was seeing in consultation one-to-one. So the idea was, okay, first what I wanted to do was literally create a whole series of video training on what is the mind map. And I started out and I got to about the fifth video and I'm like, yeah, this is really not that helpful to people at this point in time. What I realized was, for people who were interested, this is fascinating, and the people want to know that. But for people who would first be engaged, I can't assume to know that people are looking for a solution to something. They're not necessarily looking for an explanation of something. I do believe that explanation is a major part of finding a good solution and translating that plan into action. But I realized I have to step back and actually start addressing issues that are at hand. So perspective for life became something that was then, okay, well, how do we deal with emotions? Or how do we deal with calming or quietening the thinking when I'm feeling overwhelmed or when I'm feeling anxious or when I'm struggling to focus? So I started doing some of the courses like the mental reset and then, sort of understanding emotions, a better understanding of who I am through an understanding of emotions, and then looked at one on anger and, sort of where does anger come from and how is that helpful? Because that was something that I'd seen a couple of people with real anger issues who've, two people have come to mind right away. Both of them, one visit, and they got it and they would come back after 2 weeks. Or I had somebody message me, in fact, one of them even in the month, and said, I was supposed to come back for a follow up, but I'm great. Now, again, I'm not anticipating that that is a stick for life because we have a tendency towards, as I say, being forgetful at times. But it was one of those things where I realized, I need to actually create end products from the system that would be beneficial to people who then, when they saw the value, would eventually be able to say, okay, tell me more. Let me understand more. Because I think that remains my intention with Perspective for Life is not just to give, well, here's a solution for anxiety and here's a solution for relationships that are struggling, or here's some anger management, which there was, I love the title on that one, by the way. It's not out yet, but it's All the Rage. And sorry, it was just, by the way, it was something, I love titles and catchy phrases and those kinds of things. But the idea was, okay, I need now somebody to do what I do very poorly, and that is to start growing this online, start marketing this online. And that's where we find ourselves now. For the last 3 months, really, we've been working on laying some foundations of building a community. And that's when we have our Mind Map Mondays. And sort of in my own thinking, this is, God willing, 6 months to a year of just laying the foundation. I'm anticipating finishing up a really nice course on self control and slowly building that up to the point where I hope Perspective for Life will have the kind of following and community that people can actually engage in. And ultimately, I would love to do training in the mind map, training in Perspective for Life for people who could actually take the concepts, make it their own, and start helping themselves and other people in the same way that I'm sort of helping. So let me make this clear as well. I'm not suggesting I'm the only one who has a solution to all of these types of things. There are people out there who've done and who are doing phenomenal work in many areas. What I think we have that's different is we have it with, as I said, a coherent and comprehensive approach that really fits well together, that people can grasp, and without having to have studied years and years of, sort of anatomy or physiology or biochemistry or neurophysiology or psychology or any of those kinds of things, can have a really good understanding of human behavior, human thinking, in a way that impacts massively positively, not only when they have a problem, but when they find themselves in a situation where I want to pursue a goal or I want to grow in a particular area. All the principles apply consistently throughout, which is why I say it's super helpful for how we think, how we feel, how we live, how we learn, how we grow. All of those things come from this. So Perspective for Life is really a matter of, here's a place where hopefully over time we will have enough material for people to come in at pretty much any point. I want to achieve a goal. I need more self-control. I want to make sure that I'm well prepared for a long-term relationship or for marriage. I might want to be, so better equipped to perform better at work. I need to deal with my anxiety. I need to overcome this anger. Whatever it might be, a person could come in at any point and hopefully find themselves exposed to something that really is beneficial and influential over every facet of life.
So I'm gonna
Ambitious.
so I'm gonna throw a little bit something. So I mean, I believe in perspective for life, and obviously I joined straight away as you kind of like, let's do something about this and help me build it. And
Without which I will say to you, and anyway, without you, I promise you, would still have been just my piece of paper on my desk with lots of concept diagrams.
I had
So
more
thank you
time. I
for
had
that.
more time.
I owe you.
Um, but I remember looking at perspective for life, and I always thought, what kind of conversation I would like to contribute, generally in the world, really, what on which side of the scale I want to be. What kind of people do we want to become? What kind of society do we want to become? And naively, as I say, I would like do the right thing now and create people to do more right things. And what kind of thinkers do we want to become? And it's all in we're all in the relationships, and what kind of relationship we want to, it's healthier, and what does it mean, healthier relationship? And I'm very clear on this, how to become a more, moral, human beings that show up and have that level of commitment to common goal and community. And so and then it's interesting. You change the one person, and the impact on people around is remarkable. You will challenge the relationship around yourself. You will start becoming, a different person and making better choices. And inevitably, people around you will have to change simply because you are not showing up in the same way. You are showing a different model of behavior. And hopefully, that's going to be a ripple effect, right? You kind of, and so I loved that perspective for life, as you said, is not the only one. And we knew that there's no arrogance about it, but we are on the right side of the scale where we want to create these way better conversations about what kind of people really society needs more and what kind of thinkers are better. So, you know, just from regulating yourself better emotionally, think about how many conflicts we go into continuously. What if you could have them resolved faster? What if you would actually create healthier relationship out of conflict rather than just really not being able to repair ever again? What could you say differently? What increases really a world to be a little bit calmer, more peaceful? So I truly think this kind of frameworks allows just it's just the added compass to when we are lost, when we have a noise, and there's lots of noise around us, and we see that. So most people have insecurity about everything right now. So parenting and self and work and everything became a concept that you can redefine and move around. And so I do like that we are tackling this. So I'm a bit more naive, idealistic a little bit here, but I see a bigger effect. People say, how do you change the world? You start from self. You really do. And you clean up first your garden and then you think. And if everyone took care of the person next to them, the world would be a really amazing place. So I think they do have a nice butterfly effect. All of this, whoever comes to your office and truly commit to examining themselves and facing themselves as they are and seeing the parts that they really kind of have that humility and humanize other people as well as they looking at themselves. I think that it introduces better language and conversations and curiosity about other people, which has become more open. And then, yeah, I think it's almost like a collective growth.
I like what you said there in one of the things in terms of just the benefit to other people. We see that a lot.
Yes,
And I think if
yes,
I had to, sort of break it down into what may be a significant contributor to that is I find that people who work through this become much less defensive of themselves.
yes.
They, they,
Also
they,
self-centered. I find them
they
far less
definitely, yes, when
self-centered.
they've been working through these things, they see the value in giving. They see the satisfaction to be had in contributing rather than taking. Um, Again, I find that a lot of people who I start with are stuck. This concept of feeling stuck in whatever it is, a relationship, a job,
Yes.
whatever else it might be. And I find that with the perspective for life, sometimes even before relief, there's release. There is a sense of I'm able to move out of the stuck
Yes.
position. And so as I find myself moving out and moving forward, not to say that everything is fixed or everything is fine,
No.
but I'm able to start making movement towards living now, living presently better, whether that be doing the next right thing, whether that be doing the next responsible thing or the next helpful thing or the next thing that's most aligned with who I am or who I want to be or those kinds of things, which ties in so strongly with the development of super self control. All of those kinds of things are things that um, the change, even though I've said not everybody is going to have a dramatic change and then the change sticks for life, the changes are long lasting. We often require a bit of polishing, every one of us. You require that. There are times, probably twice a year, where I will say to myself, it's time for a fresh start. And I'll wake up one morning and it literally will be, what is behind me is behind me. The good, the bad, the great, the not so great. It's literally behind me. Doesn't mean it's forgotten, but it means my mind doesn't occupy that space. And I'm going to go forward. Even in this week, funny enough, I had a sense like that because I had approached a particular person in a particular kind of way that I was like, I need to slow down with this person. I can see they're sharp. I can see they're on board, but I'm a little, sort of overly enthusiastic
Eager.
here, and I'm eager and I'm running in a way that, I'm going to probably have them trip rather than, actually benefit. So there's a continual checking, on myself. And I think a lot of people continually are checking on themselves. And that really, as I say, is what helps us become unstuck in many respects and help us become less needful of the sense of I have to defend my position or defend myself. In fact, what I quite enjoyed was in the Perspective for Life school, the online community, when I structured, I think there are 8 or 9 points as to what are the guidelines for interacting in the community. I really enjoyed doing that because it was a matter of saying, recognize that the only time people have conflict is where there's disagreement that they don't manage well. So let's recognize that if people live on the basis of perspective, which is being constructed on the hardware of the brain that is being developed, with this concept of self in a situation that might be completely different from person to person, that's heavily influenced by emotion and interpretation of experience, you start realizing no wonder we've got such different ideas about life. And somehow, without the idea of being, we have to all align and agree on every facet of life in order to get on, let's recognize that there are significant differences and that if we commit to agreeing that each person is equally valuable, we might then be inclined to say, I'm less concerned with having to consider every position as equally valid. And that's an important concept for me. There might be people who strongly disagree with what I say, and I can respect them as an individual, and I can say I might disagree with you, and we can deal with that in a respectful way and say we agree to disagree, or however that might translate. But I think that the whole concept of not being so self-defensive, that in no way means not being a person of conviction. I'm very clear on what I believe. I'm very clear on what my convictions are. And I can say to you, I embrace many people who would have very, very different positions to me. And we share wonderful relationships for which I am very grateful. And a lot of that comes from the understanding that has been developed through mind map and through perspective for life. So that's a little bit off, but it relates again to, I think, the value and where this is helpful to sort of the people who engage with this material.
What I love is that although thanks to Perspective for Life and definitely our friendship, I have a longer honeymoon periods where I am more of what I want to be and how I want to be. And then, I mean, I get to experience self, just being thrown off. And it's quite it's a humility that kicks in. But also, those kind of reminders, it just, like, I did, thanks to that, I introduced acceptance, but also a bit self-care and compassion, that I just realized what happened, what can I learn, and so it's just easier to go through these things. And so it's a nice combination. I think if I was what you just mentioned, we still fall, and now I know that's just it's just part of life. I mean, you're just gonna have difficulties and you're not gonna deal some well. But what you do, how do you repair and what do you recover? Now I have tools. I know what to do. And so you can face better the difficulties. But so, yeah,
That's important to understand, because when a person recognizes I can fall, there isn't a complacency with that. There
no,
isn't a, well, there's a justification for me being less than what I ought to be. Instead, it's a, I'm not going to,
I
sort
still
of,
see it as it
I'm
is.
going to see it as it is.
I take I mean, I'm accountable. So the first thing comes what assessment of self. This
See it
is
as it
really
is.
amazing. It's assessment of self
Right.
that comes
Deal
first.
with it as it is.
Yes,
That's the part. Just because I see it as it is doesn't mean I leave it there. Still need to deal with it rightly. And
yes,
that, I think, is one of those parts. I love the concept that you said there, that humility. I honestly and truly believe that it's very, very difficult to learn anything without a sense of humility that I could be wrong. That doesn't mean
yes,
that, again, I can't be deeply convicted about or have deep conviction on the things I strongly believe. But any sense of I know it all, and I know it all in every moment. I mean, as I said already, how many times we're forgetful. We're forgetful people, which is why, again, this recognition that we do struggle along at times. But the more we understand self, the more we understand others, the more we understand reality, the better we see it as it is, the better we can deal with it as it is, the better we can navigate what it is. And I like that kind of concept. And I think Perspective for Life really promotes that. One of the things that we've spoken about before, you would often say to me, well, who's this for? We need to nail this down and say, who is the niche? And I would always say to you, it's for everybody. And who'd be like,
I'm still gonna go again.
and in many respects,
It's for everyone, but not everyone is motivated equally.
100%.
So
And I think
yeah,
that's why I raised the issue now is
so yeah,
Perspective for Life and the principles that it's built on apply to every single human being. That
true,
does not mean that every single human being will be interested, will want it, will embrace it. And
sure.
that is fine. So in many ways, again, it's becoming one of those areas where it's been a challenge to establish who is this genuinely for, when it's not somebody who's sitting down in front of me and I can pick up immediately where they're at.
So I mean, now if we looked at it, who is it for? There are. I mean, the world is now far more exposed to prevention and thinking in advance and character building and resilience, and we are seeing this much more now in the last 5 to 10 years. There's a concept of stoicism and ice bath and challenging yourself and pushing yourself in the wilderness and I don't know, finding your really limits and all of
Mm.
this. And so we are seeing this more and more. The people who just want to, they're intentional about who they want to become.
I like that.
But then you definitely have people who have now accumulated so much damage through the certain, dysfunctional coping skills and just can't bear anymore living life that they really they're just deeply not satisfied with where they are and they're anxious, they don't sleep. So they reach the point where there's just no way out. I mean, you're
They're
stuck. They're
stuck.
stuck. And
There
we
it
said
is.
that we're stuck. I tried, nothing worked.
Yes.
So I can't continue like this. So the cost is really, really high, but cost is also obvious now. And we see quite a lot in marriage. This is actually phenomenal how
See
much
a
we
lot of that.
struggle in relationships across all the generations, from understanding the partnership to maintaining and what realistically we can expect from really a partner and how to express your own wants and needs and so it's usually staying on what we're talking, just the topic. I mean, we quite often say people go into conversation with one kind of starting point and then they wander off into,
We're quite good at that, actually.
yeah, no, well, we'll, like, it works in our favor. It's like we tinker a lot, but we just endlessly curious. But I find that most people get why are we here? What? And they don't come back. They just keep holding the position.
Mm.
So there's diminishing curiosity completely. Eventually, I just want to prove myself. It's all about me, and
There's
you
that
should
self-defense.
exactly. And so you can see all of this. We witness it. I mean, I can see it with myself when that wants to kick in. Like
Yeah.
it's just such a. It's
It's
on
natural.
it's on the
Absolutely
surface. It's
natural.
amazing. Protecting self
Can I
is
tell you why, out of interest? If you were to look at the mind map, why that happens, right? The natural tendency we have is we know intuitively we need to be right to be successful. We know intuitively we have to have the right information to be able to bring about the things that we want. And intuitively, we know we need to be right to be self assured. We need to be right for confidence. And we also like to be right for image sake. So there's three big reasons
Yeah, I mean, the
why we want to
incentive is,
massively
of
incentivized
course.
to defend self, which is why we said the willingness to not be self defensive, the willingness to examine one's own beliefs, the willingness to be humble enough to say, I could be wrong. Oftentimes, I find that when a person challenges me on something, that I'm willing to look at it and go through it again and say, that's exactly why I arrived at the conclusion I arrived at. I can still walk away with having a disagreement with even greater clarity on why I believe what I believe. That's not defending the position because it's mine. That's examining a position and embracing it because I think it's right or it's factually valuable. I interrupted you for 1 second, but I wanted to ask you a question.
Mm.
When I was saying about, who is Perspective for Life for? Who do you think it's for?
I just was just talking about, so there are people definitely that we are riding on the trend now that they're more examining self and they're far more intentional and purposeful about who they want to become.
Right.
But then there are people definitely who are now having really fire under their feet and they have a high cost of continuing as they
Right.
are.
As you had mentioned,
So
those
I
two.
think relationships right now, I was seeing,
Third,
and
yes.
so definitely, I know you keep talking about young people, but
Mm.
I find with them, the cost is just not as high. The consequences are still not, because most of them are not making the biggest decisions, right? Who should I marry? Who should I be with, involved? Who should I have kids with? And what kind of parent should I be? These are massive, as I said, decisions that hold such a gravity in terms of pool of resources. So, and so the people who already made the decision, we see that if you can see who is searching for you, they're already committed to something
Mm.
and it's not going in line with what they expected.
I love what you said.
So that is really where we see already people who invested in something, it's not going well, it's costing them more. And at this point, they're having more cost than really, reward on this. Efforts are just not anymore paying out. But the choices they make just don't pan out to be the way in the results, right? So they're trying to understand what is going on. There's a lot of people who are stuck. So they come, and so we see a lot of people who are already in a relationship, already parents. You see how many parents of teenagers. It's amazing how many parents, a
Big
certain
group.
big group, teenagers themselves, prompted by the parents who struggle to navigate the challenges of really living in the environment as it is, and demands really that are put on them. So yeah, so there's for me, I can see a lot of, really, it's a marriage. Marriage for me is one of the big, I see continuously a lot of dramas in maintaining long-term relationships for sure, parents, and of course we include corporate. I mean, most of our lives, we forget this. Most of our lives are spent at work. Um, as if out of 7 days, five, you're looking at commuting and being in the office, you're talking about 10, 9 hours a day. So that is a massive, I mean, if I'm spending that much time, I really need to understand how to care, how to build good relationships, how to resolve conflicts in the relationship, how to be intentional about that, how to manage myself, because these are really consequential. I mean, behaviors. You can lose a job, you can really make poor decisions that influence other people. At work, you're definitely tangled up with a team somewhere. So the cost is never one, it's always a ripple effect. So in that sense, I definitely see in corporate, we see people coming back completely overloaded.
So what you're saying is for everyone.
Well, in a certain environment, this is need is exaggerated simply because the demand is higher on us being more intentional about how we make choices, how we think, and how we approach, simply because the decisions we make
Yeah.
carry far more cost in resources and energy, and definitely on the other people around us. So this is why when I see young people, they're still not tackling really some of the complex problems. that will they invest years. So solution will take a bit longer time to be rolled out. So, the exam I failed, I failed, whatever, parents are paying, I live with
Mm.
care parents. It's a very short term consequence that they see. They don't care. They don't have ownership fully of the problem.
One of the things when you talk about them is I see a lot of teenagers. So
Yes.
oftentimes I find the mind map incredibly helpful for
So
them.
define the age, please, because this is so interesting
I
to me.
see people typically between the age of 12 and sort of 18, but up to say 25 is a big group of people that I see. Um, and inevitably, they are coming in with tremendous uncertainty, tremendous anxiety. There are people who are having conflict in their relationships. There are people who are having to try and uh, deal with issues that they don't really have people to turn to. They don't, so they're trying to navigate the complexities of the perceived world or
But
the
also
perceived
decision
complexities,
making. They're
struggle with
confused.
decision. And the irony is, with those, is they're oftentimes, with all of their uncertainty, super confident in the things that they hold to. But that's a separate group. What I think is, if I'm listening to you and saying again, where do I think, if I were to predict where perspective for life would
That
go?
was one of the questions.
Okay, well, I'm
Although I have,
feeling it.
you know,
I think we're going to do a part three. But no, we'll have to. I don't know how long we've been going. But I would say this because it's not clear to me at this point in time where I think we're drilling down to say that's our entry point. As I said, whether that's over the next 3 months, 6 months, year, just laying the general foundation of all the facets of perspective for life. I think what's likely to happen is whether it end up being something on what is true acceptance and how does one develop acceptance to navigate one's life, or whether it be on relationships or whatever it might be, something is going to end up standing out that will become sort of a flag that will draw attention to
mm.
perspective for life as a whole. And then people are likely to come in and say, hey, but there's something for me there, or hey, there's something for you there, rather than being, there's one thing for everybody.
So
That's what I think.
I don't worry about niche at all anymore. I'm more because we are at the stage where building this up.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in value and how well this value comes through.
Yeah.
So bringing true uniqueness of the tool and then approach and pressure testing, because we are exposing it to a where we don't in one-on-one you have an immediate feedback and you have a
Yeah.
follow-up questions and then you have more details and context and you can make it more personal and all of these things we are now changing a little bit the way we are presenting it.
Mm.
So how many details we are very much intuitive about how would I okay now that I explore in the course and I'm going to touch now on courses why definitely we are moving forward with the courses, right, where we
Let's do
allow
part three on the courses. Please allow me that.
Cal, are you
Okay.
around? Go
Thanks,
for
Phoenix.
it.
So we'll then say three things for Ryan Perspective for Life Maliks, everything involved. Thank you.
Okay.